Participating, most people look for external signs, a message, a like, a call, something visible that proves distance is ending. But emotional distance never ends on the outside first. It always ends on the inside, long before someone reaches out, changes behavior. Participating or shows renewed interest, the real shift happens privately in their emotional world. When someone pulls away, it's rarely because their feelings disappear. It's because their emotional system goes into protection mode. They create distance to avoid vulnerability. Participating confusion or emotional overload, the silence is not indifference, it's self-regulation. But emotional walls are not permanent. They slowly dissolve as the nervous system calms down. The mind starts replaying moments. Emotional memory resurfaces. Participating, curiosity replaces resistance. And that internal movement happens silently without you ever knowing. This is why people often say, she came back out of nowhere. It never came out of nowhere. It just happened where you couldn't see it. Participating, the internal shift begins with emotional contrast. Life without you feels different. The emotional environment changes. Something familiar is missing. And that absence creates internal questioning. Was I too harsh? Why does this feel unresolved? Participating, why am I thinking about them again? These questions don't lead to action immediately. They lead to reflection, emotional reprocessing. The mind starts softening its defensive narrative. Before, distance felt safe. Now it feels incomplete. An turning point. Not when someone reaches out, but when they stop emotionally justifying the distance. And the most important part, this process cannot be rushed. If you interfere too early by reaching out, explaining, or seeking reassurance, however, you reset the emotional cycle, you replace reflection with comfort, you stop the emotional system from feeling the absence fully. That's why real reconnection requires emotional space, not games, not silence as a tactic, but genuine detachment. Participating, when you emotionally move on, the internal pressure disappears. You're no longer pulling emotionally. And without emotional pull, the other person is free to feel their own emotions clearly. They're no longer reacting to your need. Participating, they're responding to their own feelings. That's why emotional distance always ends internally first, because attraction doesn't return through persuasion. It returns through emotional clarity, and emotional clarity only exists in space. Participating, indifference doesn't disappear all at once. It slowly gives way to curiosity. That's the first real sign that emotional distance is ending. When someone stops feeling emotionally flat and starts wondering again, the internal shift has already begun. Participating curiosity is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send messages or make promises. It lives in the background of the mind, surfacing in moments of silence. It asks questions without answers. What are they doing now? How are they really? Have they changed? Participating, are they happier without me? These thoughts don't mean she's ready to come back. They mean emotional neutrality is breaking. Indifference requires certainty. Curiosity requires uncertainty. And uncertainty is the doorway back to emotional connection. Participating, they build emotional narratives to justify the distance. They tell themselves why leaving was necessary, why separation was right, why detachment is healthier. But curiosity begins to dismantle that story. Participating, it pokes holes in emotional certainty. Once certainty cracks, the emotional system starts reevaluating. Curiosity often expresses itself indirectly. She might ask mutual friends about you. She might check your social presence without engaging. Participating, she might notice changes in your energy if your paths cross. None of this is meant to be seen. It's meant to be felt internally. This is why many people misread the situation. They think nothing is happening because nothing is visible. But emotionally, participating, a lot is happening beneath the surface. Curiosity is also protective. It allows someone to reconnect emotionally without risking vulnerability. It's a safe middle ground between distance and engagement. Before someone opens their heart, they first open their mind. Participating, and here's the key, curiosity grows in silence, not pressure. If you reach out too early, curiosity collapses into reassurance. The emotional system gets comfort instead of contrast. The question gets answered before it can deepen. Curiosity needs space to expand. Participating, it needs time to form emotional weight. When unanswered, it pulls attention inward. It creates emotional tension. Emotional tension is the foundation of attraction. This is why the healthiest response to distance is self-focus, not waiting, not monitoring, participating, but redirecting your energy into your life. That creates natural unpredictability. When you're no longer emotionally accessible in the same way, curiosity intensifies. The emotional system starts searching for resolution. But the moment curiosity becomes visible, it's usually subtle, a warmer tone, a small question, a brief interaction that feels different. That's curiosity peeking out before commitment. And when you recognize curiosity without chasing it, you allow the emotional process to complete itself. Participating, because once curiosity fully replaces indifference, emotional distance has already begun to collapse. Before communication returns, tone changes first, not the amount of contact, not the length of messages, not the frequency of the tone. Participating, emotional distance is held in emotional armor. And when that armor starts to soften, it shows up in how someone speaks, not how often they speak. When someone is distant, their communication feels flat, guarded, efficient. Messages are short, replies feel neutral. Participating, the interaction feels polite but empty. That's emotional protection in language form. But when distance begins to end, something subtle shifts. The same short message now carries warmth, a little curiosity, a softer energy. Participating, the words themselves might not change much, but the emotional texture does. Instead of cold responses, there's openness. Instead of avoidance, there's presence. Instead of emotional walls, there's emotional air. Starts participating. This happens because emotional safety is returning internally. They're no longer defending themselves from feeling. They're allowing emotional signals to pass through again. And here's the key, this shift often happens unconsciously. She's not deciding to soften, safe enough to relax. Emotional tone is regulated by the nervous system. When the nervous system relaxes, emotional expression becomes natural again. There's no effort, no strategy, no plan. That's why tone is the most reliable indicator. Part two, because you can fake frequency, but you can't fake emotional warmth. People can send messages out of boredom, guilt, or habit, but warmth comes from emotional availability. A soft tone might look like small things, a genuine question, a light joke, a shared memory, participating in a more personal response. Even a simple "how have you been" can feel different depending on emotional tone. And the moment tone changes, the emotional door is already open. But here's the mistake most people make: they rush in. Participating, they interpret softness as a green light to reattach emotionally. They overshare, they escalate too quickly, they bring emotional weight back before the emotional foundation is stable. And that often rebuilds distance. Participating, because soft tone means emotional safety is returning, not emotional readiness. It's a bridge, not a destination. The healthiest response to a softening tone is calm presence, not emotional intensity, not emotional testing, just grounded energy. Participating, let the emotional system continue opening naturally. Because the more pressure you apply, the more the nervous system retreats. Emotional safety only grows in low pressure environments. So when you notice tone shifting, less guarded, more open, participating, more emotionally present, understand what's really happening. Distance isn't gone yet, but it's no longer being defended. And when emotional armor is removed, reconnection becomes possible. When emotional distance begins to dissolve, participate, the past quietly re-enters the present. Not as nostalgia, not as regret, but as emotional memory. She starts referencing moments you shared. Inside jokes resurface. Stories from back then come up naturally. Participating, and this is one of the clear psychological signs that emotional safety is returning. People don't revisit memories with someone they feel emotionally close to. Participating. The mind only brings up shared experiences when the emotional system feels safe enough to reconnect with that version of itself. Memory is emotional access, the brain reopening a door it once locked. When distance was strong, those memories were avoided. Participating, thinking about them felt too emotional, too unresolved, or too vulnerable, so the mind pushed them away. But once internal resistance softens, the memories come back on their own, and they don't come back randomly. Participating, they come back as emotional walls are lowering. Shared memories carry emotional meaning. They remind someone how they felt around you, the emotional state you created for them, the laughter, the connection, the sense of being understood. Participating, that emotional state gets reactivated in the present. This is why people often say, "I was just thinking about that time." That sentence alone reveals everything. It means your emotional imprint is active again. The mind is not only remembering you. Participating, it's remembering itself with you. And that's powerful, because people don't miss individuals, they miss emotional versions of themselves, who they were when they felt connected, safe, and emotionally alive. Participating, bringing up memories, is the emotional system testing reconnection without risking vulnerability. It's a way of saying, this emotional door still feels familiar. It's not asking for commitment. She's not confessing feelings. Participating, she's simply allowing emotional access again. And here's the mistake many people make. They treat this as a sign to dive into emotional intensity. They overanalyze the memory. They push for emotional clarity. They try to turn a soft moment into a deep conversation. Participating, that often shuts the door again. Because emotional memories are invitations, not guarantees. They're emotional bridges, not emotional conclusions. The healthiest response is to meet the memory with calm presence, lightness, emotional steadiness, not neediness. Participating, and not emotional pressure. Let the memory exist without attaching meaning to it. Because the moment you try to control the emotional direction, you reintroduce emotional pressure. And pressure rebuilds distance. Participating, shared memories returning means emotional comfort is coming back. It means the nervous system no longer sees you as a threat to emotional stability. It doesn't mean she's ready to return fully. It means she's emotionally reopening. Participating in emotional reopening is always the stage before emotional reconnection, because people only revisit the past with someone they're slowly becoming ready to feel again. When emotional distance is ending, curiosity quietly replaces indifference. Participating, one of the most subtle but powerful signs, is when she starts asking about your life again, not in a surface level way, but with genuine interest. She wants to know what you're doing, how you're feeling, what's changed, who you've become. And psychologically, participating, this means the emotional disconnect is dissolving. Indifference is emotional shutdown. Curiosity is emotional reopening. When someone truly detaches, they stop caring about your internal world, your thoughts, your routines, your progress. Participate, none of it registers emotionally. But when curiosity returns, it means emotional investment is returning with it. She's not just gathering information, she's emotionally recalibrating her perception of you. The human brain constantly updates emotional meaning. Parting, when distance existed, her emotional memory of you may have been frozen in an old version, arguments, misunderstandings, emotional pain, or emotional stagnation. But curiosity signals that the mind is ready to update that image. She wants to see if you've changed. Participating, not because she wants to judge you, because emotional safety requires consistency and growth. The mind needs to know if reconnecting will feel different this time. And here's the deeper layer. Curiosity is vulnerability without exposure. Participating, she doesn't want to reveal feelings yet. That's too risky. So instead, she explores emotionally from a safe distance. She asks about your life because it gives her emotional data without emotional commitment. This is why the questions feel different. Participating, they're not random, they're reflective. How have you been lately? What are you focused on now? Are you still into that thing you used to love? These questions probe identity, not logistics. She's trying to understand who you are now emotionally. Participating. And when someone becomes curious again, it means they're subconsciously testing emotional compatibility. They're asking, would it feel good to reconnect with this version of you? The biggest mistake people make here is oversharing or emotional dumping. Participating, they treat curiosity as permission to explain everything, every struggle, every emotion, every desire. That overwhelms the emotional system because curiosity wants emotional texture, not emotional weight. The healthiest response is to stay grounded, present, participating, and emotionally stable. Share your life with confidence, not with justification. Let her feel your growth without needing to prove it. Curiosity thrives on emotional polarity, on seeing you calm-centered, engaged in life, not waiting, not chasing, participating, not emotionally dependent. When she sees you emotionally whole, curiosity becomes attraction, because attraction requires emotional safety and emotional independence. And that's the transformation. Curiosity isn't about information, it's about emotional permission. Participating, she's given herself permission to feel again slowly, safely, without pressure. Because no one asks about someone they've emotionally closed off. From curiosity is the mind reopening the door before the heart steps through it. When emotional distance truly ends, the final shift is always behavioral, not verbal. Words can be polite, curious, or even emotional, but behavior reveals where the heart has already moved. Participating, one of the clearest signs she is coming back is when she starts creating opportunities to be part of your world again, even if she doesn't label it that way. This looks like coincidental interactions that aren't really coincidences. She shows up where you are. Participating, she finds reasons to message you that don't require a reply. She reacts to your presence with warmth instead of neutrality. These are not random acts, they are emotional instincts. The human mind doesn't seek proximity to what it feels finished with. Participating, when someone is emotionally done, they avoid emotional friction. They don't want reminders, interactions, or shared space. But when attraction reactivates, the nervous system pulls toward familiarity again. Comfort starts to outweigh fear. Participating, and this is where most people misread the situation. They think she's just being friendly or she's bored or it doesn't mean anything. But emotionally, proximity is the strongest indicator of attachment returning. Participating, people don't drift closer to what they don't care about. What's really happened is emotional recalibration. She's trying to feel what it's like to exist in your orbit again, without pressure, without labels, without emotional risk. Participating, she wants to test the emotional temperature. Does it feel safe? Does it feel different? Does it feel better? And this testing always happens through small actions first. She might comment on something you post. She might bring up shared memories. Participating, she might ask about future plans in a casual way. These behaviors aren't logical, they're emotional sampling. The subconscious mind doesn't plan reunions, it feels its way back. Another key shift is the tone of energy. Emotional distance feels cold, guarded. Participating, controlled. When distance ends, the energy softens. There's more ladder, more natural flow, less defensiveness. The walls drop slightly, not dramatically, subtly. Because emotionally, returning is scarier than leaving. Leaving feels like escape. Participating, returning feels like risk. So the heart approaches slowly. This is why patience becomes power. When you don't rush the process, when you remain grounded, present, and emotionally stable, her nervous system relaxes. She feels no pressure to protect herself. Participating, no emotional debt, no expectations, and safety is what allows attraction to breathe again. The biggest mistake here is trying to secure her emotionally too fast, asking where things are going, seeking reassurance, trying to lock the future. Participating, that kills the emotional reopening. Because emotional reconnection must feel voluntary, not negotiated. When she feels free to approach without being trapped, she approaches more. When she feels emotionally chest, she retreats again. Participating. So the real sign she's coming back isn't what she says, it's how naturally she begins to fit back into your life, without resistance, without tension, without emotional strain. At that point, distance doesn't end with a conversation. It ends with comfort. Participating, when comfort returns, commitment follows naturally.